a new like research process, because if we're going to contact this investment firm, let's have something with current data points. Like we need a 2026 perspective. How much of an equity stake you think we can potentially negotiate? Give me a budget for a marketing campaign, and what should be the time frame? Do you think we should get a quote from VaynerMedia? Buenos días.
Buenos días,
Hace un
Víctor.
frío.
Perú.
Ahí afuera yo tengo como 5 suelas.
Sí, buen día, buen día.
Dios mío, Dios lo bendiga, gracias.
Amén.
That's that's my business partner. He just came to say what's up. Every day, he gives me the blessing. Every day I come. I think we should get a quote first from VaynerMedia and then present it to the investors. What do you think is the price of a small marketing campaign for Taylor Swift, for like a release or something like that? Mr. Clarence, God bless. Peace and blessings be with you. What do you think should be a retainer fee for myself? How much should I keep for myself, guaranteed? That's why I'm trying to think. Like, I know half goes to taxes almost. So I'm going to be donating all of that.
And I'm going to do it too.
That's what I'm thinking. So I have to be able to sustain for the next 3 to 5 years minimum. In 5 years, my granddaughter will be 6. I cover the first 5, 6 years, and then I have 5, 6 years to make more investments to secure the next 25, 35, 45 years. You know what I'm saying? My family needs money too. I need a few $1 million for my family. I don't want them to be stressed out during this process. I need peace of mind. I'm ordering a new Corvette. I ordered some yesterday. I'm gonna build me another. Mm-hmm. And I want everybody in my family to have it. I think I'm gonna build a spider today. What was the last business move made by people? Can you repeat that, please? No, no, no. What you said. What he has, like an art gallery. Um, what do you think about potentially partnering with people? This could be redemption for him. How much should we charge him? He's cheap. Okay. So let me ask you this. Tell me everything about the controversy with the NFT. What was it? How did they get caught? What was it that they did? Because there seemed to be some type of situation going on between the investors and people. I believe it was a gentleman of Indian descent from overseas. So he sued his business partner, or the business partner sued him. So Metacoven is the one that paid the money. Okay, is the former partner Beeple or is it a third party? So it had nothing to do with Beeple. Was it the investors and his business partner that kind of crashed the value? Where is his art gallery? Can you tell me what's the website for the gallery? Hmm. Okay. What about, do we bring Metacoven back with people? Tell me every one of Metacoven's business moves since every day. Do we have a website address, an email, a phone number for Metacoven or his organizations? I need a full list. No, for the gallery in Singapore, just so that we can know the schedule of events and stuff like that. Let me ask you a question. Can you tell me the value of the gallery? What about the construction? How much would it cost to build the facility double the size in Singapore? It's very important that it's at least double the size. Could you tell me what that would be in US dollars? So how much is that in US dollars? Oh, okay. Now I understand. No, no, no. You're fine. You're fine. So, wow. Okay, very significant. That would kind of make sense if we have a $70 million piece in there. You know what I'm saying? Not bad. Yeah. So, like, how many visitors per day or per month? What is the average visitor rate? No. What's the capacity? Like, can it host 2,000 people, 1,000 people, for example? Can we put an event? Can we have a concert there? That's why I'm asking. No, but how many people estimate? Yeah, we'll check them on Instagram. Yeah, I just finished a new build. I built the blue spider. It's nice. What percentage of crypto investors are whales? Hmm. No, so hold up. So what is 1.3% of the whole market cap? No, no, no. I'm talking about as far as users. Like, what is the complete market usage, right? What's the market cap as far as people? Transactions per day or something like that.
time in Shanghai, Shenzhen, and here in Hong Kong. You're watching The China Show. I'm Yvonne Nan with David and Glenn.
We are counting down to the open of markets in Greater China. Our top stories today, U.S. assets fall as safe havens surge as President Trump threatens new tariffs on several EU allies in pursuit of his desire to take over Greenland.
The fury in European capitals serving as the backdrop for Trump's return to Davos this week, with the continent's leaders considering potential tariffs of their own in retaliation.
And China releases a flood of economic data at the top of the next hour. Economists expect the numbers to show the slowest growth expansion since the reopening from COVID lockdowns. Risk off Monday. As you can see, Asian equities are off, not to the extent we are seeing the pressure coming through in U.S. assets, and that compared to European assets, not to the extent of the latter coming through 1.3%, the Euro Stocks 50 futures. This is a story that we'll continue to track and get into in greater detail in a moment here. It's also showing up, in fact, when you look at the currency markets, right, where this flight to haven is really showing up in the form of an outperformance in the yen, an outperformance in the Swiss currency, the euro to a lesser extent coming through. $1, of course, indicator of appetite as it pertains to EMs right now, just a proxy there, if you will, across that specific one. Now, all that is to say, when you look at the metals market, also similar theme we're looking at there, where you have silver, yeah, there we go, 6%, gold, fresh record, 2% to the upside. Yeah, a slight bounce we are getting, of course, in the other metals coming online right now. This has to also do with the fact that on Friday in the afternoon, towards the end of the session, we did get, of course, a very sharp sell-off, steep sell-off across some of the metals, related perhaps to the China story, which we'll get to later on. Right, A50 futures, just keep in mind, we are coming off 4 weeks of gains on MSCI China, and we are likely to see the open much lower today, fairly consistent with the sell-off we're seeing across the region, 0.5% on A50 futures. And yes, everything from data comes out this hour. So I think you have property prices, you have, and of course, you have the activity numbers coming through the next hour.
Yeah, it seems like you might see, right, growth momentum really slow down the fourth quarter. I think it's still able to kind of reach that threshold of 5% growth for the year, at least for China. But I think most economists are expecting maybe this year you're going to see growth that's going to be sub 5% in some ways. When you start to see maybe the export side of things maybe slow down just a bit. But certainly it's going to be a key question there as well. But you got to take it back to Greenland, right? Because of what we've been hearing, the threats that all came from just one post on Saturday from the president threatening tariffs when it comes to some of his European allies. And, you know, Bloomberg Economics says, right, that could really cut exports by about 50% to Europe potentially here. What does that mean for growth? Also, I mean, you're talking about tariff rates that could be even higher than the likes of China that the U.S. has imposed as well on Europe if this whole Greenland sort of threat.
Have a blessed day.
Yeah, these are U.S. allies in Europe, which, if you recall, the U.S. just struck a trade deal with its allies in Europe, of course. And how can you now trust a trade deal just months old, given, of course, the changing narrative and the likelihood that we might get more tariffs coming through? Is this a card flip? And of course, it really brings us back. All roads will lead, at least this week, to what's taking place in Davos, of course.
I mean, Wednesday is when President Trump is going to speak in Switzerland here, as he does face, of course, those European allies. So I think markets are really going to be waiting on and really seeing what the tone is going to be struck from the president here on how far is he willing to really push on this whole Greenland issue. And is now the time for Europe to kind of push back and really maybe stop appeasing President Trump, as some have called it. I think it was interesting what we heard from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, over the weekend as well, saying that the U.S. won't back down when it comes to Greenland because the continent is too weak to ensure its security. Take a listen.
If there were an attack on Greenland from Russia, from some other area, we would get dragged in. So better now, peace through strength, make it part of the United States, and there will not be a conflict because the United States right now, we are the hottest country in the world. We are the strongest country in the world. Europeans project weakness. The U.S. projects strength.
Does Davos have a spine? That is the question that Stephen Roach has laid out here. He, first time I think in 10 plus years, he's not going to be attending, but he's like, I wish I was there.
Just to see this, or
just to see how this is going to unfold.
If they'll do something.
If they do something. And of course, this is going to be the face-to-face, of course, since this, escalation of transatlantic, relations, right? So I want to see firsthand if European leaders have the courage to do what American leaders have not done, challenge the growing insanity of a power-hungry American president.
And so our understanding is European leaders are likely to meet in person, right, over the next few days. So it's still unclear where that will be because many of them, hedge that, many of them will likely be attending, and to what extent we will hear in public a pushback. And really what the tone is going to be, right? Because Donald Trump will either likely try to sell the idea of Greenland, justify it against the backdrop of this global community of investors, business people that are hinged on not just everything he says, but everything he does as far as the trade deal is concerned.
You're already hearing the likes of the French President Emmanuel Macron talking about this anti-coercion instrument, right? Are they going to have to use this, what people say is the bazooka that Europe has in this escalating tensions here? And that would go beyond just custom duties, right? That could also limit the market access that maybe some of these U.S. tech titans have in the continent too.
Okay, it looks like we have our hands full.
Yep.
We haven't even talked about the PCA and the Fed, and there's a different conversation now taking place. We'll talk about that later, but I think when you look at markets today, it's clearly that is the big story that markets are trading on, whether that's precious metals at a record, whether equities are on offer, defense stocks in the region are playing up on the back of the conversations around this. Rosalind Matheson is with us right now. Our Bloomberg News Chief Asia correspondent is with us to help us understand the latest and how we got here this Monday.
Well, that's right. Well, interestingly, we're going to have, as you say, Donald Trump talking at Davos, but the contrast will be Davos a year ago because Donald Trump was just in the door as president a year ago. He did address Davos virtually, and everybody wanted to understand, what is this presidency going to look like? Well, we're a year in. We've got a sense, at least, of some of the chaos that can come from this administration, and certainly Donald Trump, upending some of the global order by changing his relationship with allies and foes alike, and particularly when it comes to Europe, where Davos is obviously going to be held. He's coming in right as he's threatening, again, tariffs on European allies over Greenland, where he's coming in saying that Greenland needs to become part of the US, where he's again criticizing NATO, European nations for not doing enough. As Scott Besson was saying, US is projecting strength, Europe is projecting weakness. And really that's the question then for Europe at Davos. How are they going to counter that with all those leaders turning up? Are they going to continue to do what some have called appeasement, try and negotiate him off the perch, or are they actually going to stand up and say, we've had it, that's enough, and we're going to come at you, including on trade? Because Scott Besson talks about weakness, but Europe does actually have some skin in the game here, particularly when it comes to the trade side, and they can actually impact the US economy and companies there with their trade policies. And so the question is, are they willing to do that? But they probably want to see first what Donald Trump comes in and says at Davos, and just how critical he is of Europe and all of that.
Listen, have you ever seen someone who's just kind of coasting along, just kind of managing their life, trying to get things done, and kind of frustrated and not?
Yeah, and can you tell us a bit more what the options Europe has at this moment? We talked about this anti-coercion sort of measure that they have, but what options does Europe have in responding to these tariff threats now?
Well, they've suspended about 93 billion euros worth of retaliatory action against the US on trade, and that's a fair bit, and they can particularly target certain sectors and companies in the US. And some of the kind of names that really hurt around sort of like, US alcohol and so on, Levi Jeans, all those kind of big names, Harley Davidson, and so on. So do they decide to unfreeze that action? Do they go towards that anti-coercion mechanism that Emmanuel Macron is so fond of? The question is, but can Europe do that collectively? Because Macron's raised that mechanism before, and we've seen Germany particularly be very cautious, a big economy here, saying, hang on, we'd rather try and negotiate our way out of this versus coming at the US hard on it. So is this the moment that Europe comes together and says, what, we actually just have to go for it in terms of standing up for ourselves. But you've also got,
Yo,
you've got
what the
Hungary with
hell?
Viktor Orban, who favours a very
I can't
different
move.
approach. You've got the Italian leader, Giorgia Meloni, who says, let me negotiate with Trump because I do have a relationship with him, and let's try and get him to de-escalate on some of this.
Yo,
So
in
that leaders meeting this
Georgia,
week
I
will be
moved,
really
there's gonna
interesting
be
to see, can they
icicles.
come together and say we can project strength to the US.
I'm trying to figure out
both
what
on
I
the
would
military
do.
side
I'm
and
waiting
on the
for
trade
my
side.
business partners and my family members to get to my office. And I'm like, yo, I'm burning, man. It's cold. Man. I want to be freezing.
Of course, we'll talk a little more about this. The Center for Strategic
I
and
got to
International
ride
Studies
out,
Senior
dude.
Advisor
Yeah.
William Reich will be joining us
Got
in
a
just a
few
few
more
moments
minutes.
to break down the situation between Trump and Europe. The agenda today could be quite interesting too, Dave, given we are expecting the activity data, home prices, as you mentioned as well. Likely to see things maybe slowing down. We'll see how the renminbi holds.